Marcus Thompson had served as a royal guard for 12 years. His morning routine never changed. Wake at 5 a.m., physical training, breakfast, and arrive at Buckingham Palace by 7:30 a.m. sharp. On this particular Tuesday in September, everything seemed normal as he walked through the palace gates in his immaculate red uniform. The tourists were already gathering outside, cameras ready to capture the famous changing of the guard ceremony. Marcus took his position at the main entrance, his tall black bearskin hat perfectly positioned, rifle held at attention. He had done this thousands of times before, but he never grew tired of the honor. What Marcus didn't know was that Detective Inspector Sarah Chen had been watching him for 3 weeks. She sat in an unmarked police car across the street, studying his every movement through binoculars. Her notebook was filled with detailed observations about his schedule, his routes, and his habits. The investigation had started with an anonymous tip. Someone had called the police hotline claiming that a royal guard was involved in illegal activities. The caller provided specific details about Marcus: his height, his distinctive scar above his left eyebrow, and even his badge number. The accusations were serious: theft of royal artifacts and selling classified security information. Detective Chen was known for her thoroughness. She never rushed to judgment, but the evidence seemed compelling. Security footage showed Marcus in areas of the palace where he wasn't supposed to be. His bank account showed mysterious deposits that didn't match his salary. Phone records revealed calls to unknown numbers at strange hours. As Marcus stood guard that morning, he noticed the same car parked across the street for several days. It struck him as odd, but he dismissed the thought. His mind was focused on more personal matters. His daughter Emma was starting university next month, and the tuition fees were weighing heavily on his mind. His wife Sarah had been working extra shifts at the hospital to help with expenses. The royal family was scheduled to attend a state dinner that evening. Marcus had been assigned to the security detail, a responsibility he took seriously. He had undergone extensive background checks, psychological evaluations, and training to earn this position. His loyalty to the crown was unquestionable, or so he believed. Detective Chen received the order to make the arrest during the changing of the guard ceremony. Her superiors wanted maximum impact. They believed that arresting him publicly would send a strong message about corruption. She felt uncomfortable with the timing but followed orders. As the ceremony began, Marcus performed his duties flawlessly. The precision marching, the synchronized movements, the stoic expressions, everything was perfect. Hundreds of tourists watched in amazement, recording videos and taking photographs. The British tradition was on full display. Detective Chen approached slowly, waiting for the right moment. She carried handcuffs specially designed for high-security arrests. They were supposedly impossible to escape from without the key. The manufacturer claimed they had never been broken or picked by anyone. Marcus was turning to walk back to his post when he saw the detective approaching. Her badge was visible, and several uniformed officers were following behind her. The tourists began to murmur, sensing something unusual was happening. Cameras turned from the ceremony toward the unfolding drama. "Marcus Thompson, you are under arrest for theft and conspiracy," Detective Chen announced loudly. The words echoed across the courtyard. Marcus felt his world collapse in that instant. His face showed complete shock and confusion. He had no idea what was happening or why he was being accused. The handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists with a metallic sound that seemed to silence the entire crowd. Marcus looked around desperately, hoping someone would explain this nightmare. His fellow guards maintained their positions, but their eyes showed concern and disbelief. Detective Chen began reading his rights, but Marcus barely heard the words. His mind was racing, trying to understand how his life had just changed forever. He thought about his wife receiving a phone call at work, about his daughter seeing this on the news, about his reputation being destroyed in front of the world. The arrest was filmed by dozens of tourists. Within minutes, videos were being uploaded to social media platforms. The headlines would read about corruption in the royal guard, about security breaches at the palace, about the fall of a trusted protector. Marcus had always been proud of his uniform, but now it felt like a costume in a play where he didn't know his lines. The red fabric that once represented honor now seemed to mark him as a criminal. The bearskin hat that commanded respect now felt like a burden he couldn't escape. As he was led toward the police car, Marcus caught sight of his reflection in the palace windows. The man looking back at him seemed like a stranger. someone whose life had been turned upside down by accusations he couldn't understand. His military training had prepared him for many situations, but not for this moment of public humiliation. The detective's grip on his arm was firm, but not rough. She seemed professional, even sympathetic, but she was still the person taking away his freedom. The crowd of tourists parted as they walked through, some still filming, others whispering among themselves about what they had witnessed. The police car doors slammed shut with finality. As they drove away from the palace, Marcus watched his workplace disappear through the rear window. He wondered if he would ever see it again as a free man. The streets of London passed by in a blur, each mile taking him further from the life he had known and closer to an uncertain future. Detective Chen sat in the front seat, occasionally glancing back at her prisoner. She had arrested many people in her career, but something about this case bothered her. Marcus seemed genuinely confused and scared rather than defiant or angry. His reaction didn't match what she expected from someone caught in criminal activity. The handcuffs around Marcus's wrists felt heavier with each passing minute. He tested them slightly, not to escape, but to confirm this wasn't a nightmare. The cold metal against his skin was very real. His career, his reputation, and his freedom were now in the hands of people he had never met, accused of crimes he didn't understand. The police station felt cold and unwelcoming as Marcus was led through its corridors. The fluorescent lights created harsh shadows on the pale green walls. Other officers stopped their conversations to stare at the royal guard in handcuffs. News traveled fast in law enforcement circles, and everyone wanted to see the man accused of betraying the crown. Detective Chen guided Marcus to interview room 3, a small space with concrete walls, a metal table, and 3 uncomfortable chairs. The only decoration was a large mirror that Marcus knew was actually a window for observers. He had seen enough police shows to understand the setup, but being on this side of the table felt surreal. The handcuffs remained locked around his wrists as they sat down. Detective Chen placed a thick file on the table between them, its contents hidden but threatening. She opened a digital recorder and stated the date, time, and people present. The red recording light seemed to stare at Marcus like an accusing eye. "Tell me about your financial situation," Detective Chen began, her voice professional but not unkind. Marcus looked at her with genuine confusion. His salary was modest but sufficient for his family's needs. Yes, they had struggled with Emma's university expenses, but nothing that would drive him to crime. "I don't understand what this is about," Marcus replied, his voice slightly shaky. "My finances are normal. We save what we can, we pay our bills on time. There's nothing unusual." He shifted uncomfortably in the hard chair, the handcuffs making it difficult to find a natural position for his arms. Detective Chen opened the file and pulled out bank statements. "These deposits don't match your salary schedule," she said, pointing to highlighted entries. £5,000 here, £3,000 there, all in cash. How do you explain these?" The numbers on the page seemed to dance before Marcus's eyes as he struggled to understand. "I've never seen these before," Marcus said, leaning forward to get a better look. "This isn't my account. The numbers might be similar, but this isn't mine." His voice grew stronger as confusion turned to determination. "You can check with my bank. I can give you all my account information right now." The detective made notes but didn't seem convinced. She pulled out photographs next, grainy security footage showing someone in a royal guard uniform in restricted areas of the palace. The figure was too blurry to identify clearly, but the uniform was unmistakable. "This was taken last Tuesday at 11:30 p.m., Detective Chen explained. "The log shows you signed out at 6 p.m. that day. How do you explain being in the Queen's private quarters 7 hours after your shift ended?" The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a fire Marcus couldn't see. Marcus studied the photograph carefully. The uniform was correct and the height seemed right, but something felt wrong. "The stance is different," he said finally. "Look at how this person stands. Royal guards are trained to maintain specific posture at all times. This person's shoulders are too relaxed, feet positioned wrong. You're saying this isn't you?" Detective Chen asked, making more notes. Marcus could see she was writing down his every word, every gesture, every expression. He felt like a specimen under a microscope, being examined for signs of guilt or innocence. "I'm certain it's not me," Marcus replied firmly. "On Tuesday night I was at home helping my daughter with university applications. My wife was working the night shift at the hospital, but Emma can confirm I was there. We ordered Chinese food and watched a movie together, Detective Chen's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it quickly, and Marcus noticed her expression change slightly. Something new was developing in the case, but he couldn't tell if it was good or bad news for him. Outside the interview room, Detective Chen's partner, Detective Williams, was having doubts about the case. He had been reviewing the evidence while Marcus was being questioned, and several things didn't add up. The anonymous tip had been too detailed, too convenient. Real whistleblowers rarely provided such perfect information. Detective Williams had also spoken with Marcus's commanding officer at the palace. Captain Reynolds had served with Marcus for 8 years and described him as the most trustworthy guard in the unit. "If Marcus Thompson is a criminal," the captain had said, "then I don't understand human nature at all." Back in the interview room, Detective Chen returned to questioning about the phone calls. "Your records show conversations with a number registered to James Mitchell, a known dealer in stolen antiquities. How do you know Mr. Mitchell?" she asked, watching Marcus's face carefully for any sign of recognition. "I don't know anyone by that name," Marcus answered honestly. "I've never heard of him before today. You can check my phone, I don't delete anything. Every call I've made is recorded in my history." He paused, thinking, could someone else be using my number? Is that possible? The question surprised Detective Chen. Most guilty suspects didn't suggest ways to verify their innocence. They usually tried to avoid providing evidence or created complicated explanations. Marcus seemed genuinely eager to prove he wasn't involved in any criminal activity. A knock on the door interrupted the questioning. Detective Williams entered and whispered something to his partner. Marcus watched their faces, trying to read the conversation. Detective Chen's eyebrows raised slightly, and she glanced at Marcus with what might have been doubt about his guilt. "We're going to take a break," Detective Chen announced, stopping the recording. "An officer will bring you some water and something to eat. We'll continue in about an hour." As she gathered her files, Marcus noticed she left behind one photograph, the security footage from the palace. Alone in the room, Marcus studied the image more carefully. The person in the Royal Guard uniform was definitely not him, but proving that would be difficult. The quality was poor, and courts often accepted such evidence as conclusive. He began to understand how innocent people could be convicted of crimes they didn't commit. The handcuffs had been cutting into his wrists for hours now. He tried to adjust them, twisting his hands to find a more comfortable position. As he did, he noticed something odd about their construction. The locking mechanism seemed different from the standard handcuffs he had seen during his security training. Marcus had learned about various restraint devices during his Royal Guard training. Part of his job involved understanding security equipment, including handcuffs used by different law enforcement agencies. These particular cuffs looked more sophisticated than normal police equipment, with additional locking pins and what appeared to be electronic components. He examined them more closely, being careful not to make obvious escape attempts that might be observed through the mirror. The design was clever but had one potential weakness. The electronic lock required a specific sequence to engage fully. If that sequence was interrupted, the mechanical backup might not activate properly. The door opened again, and an officer brought him a sandwich and a cup of water. "How much longer will this take?" Marcus asked politely. The officer just shrugged and left without answering. Marcus ate slowly, his mind racing with thoughts about his family, his job, and his uncertain future. Meanwhile, Detective Williams was discovering more problems with the case. The bank statements that seemed so damning had been obtained through an unusual warrant request. The judge who signed it had since expressed concerns about the limited evidence presented. The phone records also showed signs of possible tampering or misidentification. Most disturbing was the anonymous tip itself. Detective Williams had traced the call and found it came from a prepaid phone purchased with cash. The caller had used voice modification software to disguise their identity. This level of sophistication suggested someone with technical knowledge and a deliberate plan to frame Marcus. As the break continued, Marcus tested the handcuffs again. His years of military and security training had taught him to observe details that others might miss. These cuffs were definitely not standard police equipment. They were designed for high-value prisoners, possibly military or intelligence applications. The discovery gave him an idea. If these were specialized handcuffs, they might have specialized vulnerabilities too. Marcus began to work on the problem systematically, the same way he had been trained to approach security challenges at the palace. Every lock had a key, and every system had a way to be defeated if you understood how it worked. Detective Williams burst into Detective Chen's office with a stack of papers and a grim expression. "Sarah, we have a serious problem with the Thompson case," he said, spreading documents across her desk. "I've been digging deeper into the evidence, and almost none of it holds up under scrutiny." Detective Chen looked up from her computer, where she had been reviewing Marcus's personnel file from the palace. "What do you mean?" she asked, though she had been having her own doubts about the case. Marcus's responses during questioning seemed too genuine, too consistent for someone trying to hide criminal activity. "The bank account isn't his," Detective Williams explained, pointing to financial records. "I contacted the bank directly. Marcus Thompson has only one checking account and one savings account, both with modest balances. These statements with the large cash deposits belong to a Marcus Thompson, note the different spelling, who lives in Manchester and works in construction." Detective Chen felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. "How did we get the wrong records?" she asked, though she suspected the answer would be disturbing. The case had been fast-tracked from the beginning, with pressure from higher-ups to make an arrest quickly. "Someone wanted us to find this evidence," Detective Williams continued. "The warrant request was filed by Detective Inspector Morgan, but when I called him, he said he never worked on this case. His signature was forged, and the paperwork was submitted through channels that bypassed normal verification procedures. The phone records were equally problematic. The calls to James Mitchell, the antique dealer, had actually been made to a number that was later reassigned. The original owner of that number was an elderly woman named Margaret Mitchell, who had donated to police charities. Someone had manipulated the records to make it appear Marcus was connected to criminal activity. "What about the security footage?" Detective Chen asked, dreading the answer. The photograph of someone in Royal Guard uniform had been their strongest piece of evidence, or so they thought. Detective Williams pulled out enhanced images created by the forensics team. The timestamp was altered, he revealed. This footage was actually taken during regular duty hours, not late at night as we were told. Someone edited the metadata to make it appear suspicious. Detective Chen stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the busy street below. Innocent people were going about their daily lives while they had arrested an innocent man based on fabricated evidence. Who would go to this much trouble to frame a royal guard? She wondered aloud. "That's what we need to figure out," Detective Williams replied. "But first we need to release Thompson. Every minute he stays in custody makes this worse for everyone involved." He paused, checking his watch. It's been 3 hours since his arrest. The media is already running stories about corruption in the Royal Guard. Back in the interview room, Marcus had made a discovery about the handcuffs. During his careful examination, he found a small manufacturing label hidden under one of the metal plates. The serial number indicated these were prototype restraints from a defense contractor, not standard police equipment. More importantly, he had identified the weakness in their design. The electronic locking mechanism depended on a specific electrical charge to maintain the lock. If that charge was interrupted at the right moment, the mechanical backup would fail to engage, leaving only a simple spring-loaded catch holding the cuffs closed. Marcus knew he could escape, but he also knew that breaking free would make him look guilty. Still, his military training had taught him to always have an exit strategy. If the situation became desperate, he wanted options available. The door opened again, and Detective Chen returned with Detective Williams. Their expressions were different now, less accusatory, more concerned. They sat down across from Marcus, and Detective Chen restarted the recording device. "Mr. Thompson," Detective Chen began, her voice softer than before, "we need to ask you some additional questions about your background and any enemies you might have. Has anyone threatened you recently? Have you noticed anything unusual about your work environment or personal life?" Marcus was surprised by the change in tone. "Are you saying you believe I'm innocent?" he asked hopefully. The relief in his voice was unmistakable, but it was mixed with confusion about why the questioning had shifted direction. "We're saying the evidence against you appears to have been fabricated," Detective Williams explained. "Someone went to considerable effort to make you look guilty of crimes you didn't commit. We need to figure out who and why." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Someone had deliberately tried to destroy his life, his career, his reputation. But who would do such a thing? His mind raced through possibilities. Disgruntled former colleagues, palace staff with grudges, or perhaps someone with a larger agenda against the royal guard system. There is someone, Marcus said slowly, remembering an incident from 6 months earlier. A former guard named David Crawford was dismissed for drinking on duty. He blamed me for reporting him even though multiple people witnessed the incident. He threatened to make me pay when he was escorted out of the palace. Detective Chen made notes as Marcus continued. Crawford had access to guard uniforms, knew palace security procedures, and understood how our scheduling system worked. He also had contacts in various government agencies from his previous military service. Where is Crawford now? Detective Williams asked, already reaching for his phone to request a background check. Marcus provided what information he could remember: Crawford's address, his military unit, and the name of the pub where he had been known to drink after work. While Detective Williams made calls, Detective Chen examined the handcuffs more closely. These aren't our standard equipment, she admitted. Someone specifically requested these for your arrest, claiming you were a high-security risk. The request came through channels I've never seen before. Marcus decided to share his discovery about the handcuffs' weakness. These are military prototypes, he explained. I've seen similar designs during Royal Guard training. They have an electronic lock with a mechanical backup, but the backup system has a flaw. Are you saying you could escape from these? Detective Chen asked, surprised by his honesty. Most suspects wouldn't volunteer information about escaping from custody, especially if they were planning to do so. Yes, but I won't, Marcus replied firmly. I want this resolved properly through the legal system. Breaking free would only make me look guilty and cause more problems for everyone involved. His integrity impressed both detectives, reinforcing their growing belief in his innocence. Detective Williams returned with disturbing news. Crawford has been missing for 2 weeks, he reported. His landlord says he disappeared suddenly, leaving behind most of his belongings. His bank account shows large cash withdrawals just before he vanished. There's more, Detective Williams continued. Crawford's military record shows training in electronic surveillance and computer systems. He would have the skills needed to manipulate bank records and phone logs. He also has connections to private security firms that might have access to prototype equipment like those handcuffs. The picture was becoming clearer, but it raised new questions. If Crawford was responsible for framing Marcus, who was helping him? The level of sophistication required suggested additional resources and inside knowledge of police procedures. Detective Chen's phone rang with news from the forensics lab. The enhanced analysis of the security footage revealed something important. The person in the Royal Guard uniform was slightly shorter than Marcus and had a different gait pattern. Computer analysis confirmed it was not the same person. We have enough to release you immediately, Detective Chen told Marcus. The charges will be dropped and we'll issue a public statement clearing your name. But we still need to find Crawford and whoever helped him orchestrate this frame job. Marcus felt overwhelming relief, but also anger at what had been done to him. His reputation had been damaged publicly, his family had been traumatized, and his trust in the system had been shaken. What happens now? He asked. Now we turn you from a suspect into a witness, Detective Williams explained. Your knowledge of palace security and your personal history with Crawford make you valuable to our investigation. With your help, we can find the people responsible and prevent this from happening to anyone else. As they prepared to remove his handcuffs, Marcus made a decision. Before you unlock these, he said, let me show you something about their design. If Crawford is using similar equipment, you need to understand their vulnerabilities. With careful precision, Marcus demonstrated the weakness in the electronic locking system. Within 15 seconds, the handcuffs clicked open, falling away from his wrists like metal bracelets he had simply chosen to remove. Both detectives stared in amazement. How did you do that so quickly? Detective Chen asked, examining the opened cuffs. The lock showed no signs of damage or forced entry. Training and observation, Marcus replied, rubbing his freed wrists. The Royal Guard teaches us to understand security systems from both sides, how to use them and how they can fail. These cuffs were designed by someone who understood the technology, but not the human factors that could defeat it. The demonstration proved Marcus's expertise and honesty. He could have escaped at any time during his detention, but chose to trust the legal process. His integrity had been tested and proven, clearing away any remaining doubts about his character. The police station's press room buzzed with activity as Detective Chen prepared to face the media. News of Marcus's arrest had spread globally, with headlines questioning the security of the royal family and the integrity of the guard system. Now she had to publicly admit that an innocent man had been arrested based on fabricated evidence. Marcus sat in Detective Williams' office, speaking on the phone with his wife Sarah. Her voice was shaky but relieved as he explained what had happened. "The whole hospital has been talking about it," she said. "I didn't know what to believe, but I knew you could never do what they accused you of." His daughter Emma was less forgiving of the system that had humiliated her father. "How can they just arrest someone without proper evidence?" she demanded when Marcus called her. "What if you hadn't been able to prove your innocence?" Her questions reflected the anger and disappointment that many people felt toward law enforcement. Detective Williams was coordinating with multiple agencies to track down David Crawford. The former Royal Guard had vanished completely, but his activities before disappearing painted a picture of careful planning and outside assistance. Bank records showed payments from shell companies that couldn't be traced to legitimate businesses. "Crawford didn't do this alone," Detective Williams explained to Marcus. "The technical sophistication required suggests involvement from people with access to advanced equipment and classified information. We're looking at possible connections to private military contractors or foreign intelligence services." The investigation had revealed that Crawford's dismissal from the Royal Guard was part of a larger pattern. He had been suspected of minor thefts and inappropriate behavior for months before the drinking incident that led to his firing. His resentment toward Marcus specifically stemmed from a comprehensive report Marcus had filed, documenting Crawford's misconduct. "He blamed you for destroying his career," Detective Williams continued. "But the truth is that his own actions made dismissal inevitable. You were just the one honest enough to document what everyone else was ignoring." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. His integrity had made him a target for revenge. Meanwhile, the forensics team was analyzing the prototype handcuffs that had been used on Marcus. Their serial numbers traced back to a defense contractor called Secure Solutions International, a company with contracts for developing restraint systems for military and intelligence agencies. Detective Chen returned from the press conference looking exhausted. "The media is demanding answers about how this happened," she reported. "Internal Affairs is launching an investigation into our procedures, and the commissioner wants a full report by tomorrow morning." "What did you tell them about the handcuffs?" Marcus asked. His demonstration of their weakness had important implications for security agencies that might be using similar equipment. "We kept that detail confidential for now," Detective Chen replied. "If Crawford's group has access to these prototypes, we don't want them to know we've identified their vulnerabilities. It might be our only advantage in tracking them down." The phone rang with news from the palace. Captain Reynolds wanted to speak with Marcus immediately about security implications of the frame job. Someone with detailed knowledge of Royal Guard procedures had orchestrated this attack, raising concerns about other potential threats to palace security. "They want you back on duty as soon as possible," Detective Williams explained. "Your expertise is needed to review security protocols and identify any other vulnerabilities that Crawford might have knowledge of." It was a sign of confidence in Marcus's abilities and character. But Marcus wasn't sure he was ready to return to normal duties. The arrest had been traumatic, and he was angry about the damage done to his reputation. "What about my family?" he asked. "Emma's university classmates have seen the news reports. Sarah's colleagues at the hospital are asking questions. How do we repair that damage?" Detective Chen understood his concerns. "The public statement will make clear that you were completely innocent and that the evidence was fabricated. We'll also release details about the real investigation to show that you're helping catch the actual criminals." "It's not enough," Marcus said firmly. "People remember the arrest, not the correction. They remember the handcuffs and the accusations, not the explanation that comes later." His voice carried the pain of someone whose life had been turned upside down by lies. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Detective Williams received a call from Interpol. Crawford had been spotted in Brussels 3 days earlier, meeting with known arms dealers and private security contractors. The meeting had been photographed by Belgian intelligence services conducting surveillance on the arms dealers. "He's not just seeking revenge," Detective Williams realized. This is part of something bigger. Crawford is selling information about British security procedures to foreign contacts. The frame job against Marcus might have been personal, but it was also serving larger criminal purposes. The Belgian authorities provided additional intelligence that painted a disturbing picture. Crawford was part of a network that recruited disgruntled former military and security personnel to compromise their former employers. They specialized in creating scandals and security breaches that damaged public confidence in government institutions. They chose you because you represent everything they hate, Detective Chen explained to Marcus. You're honest, dedicated, and respected. By destroying your reputation, they thought they could damage the entire Royal Guard system and create doubt about palace security. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. This wasn't just about clearing his name anymore. It was about protecting an institution he had served faithfully for 12 years. "What do you need me to do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the emotional turmoil he was experiencing. "We need you to help us understand how they gathered their information," Detective Williams replied. "Crawford had detailed knowledge of your schedule, your financial situation, and your family circumstances. Someone with current access to palace records provided that information." The realization was chilling. There might be another mole still working within the Royal Guard system, feeding information to Crawford's network. Marcus began reviewing his interactions with colleagues, trying to identify anyone who might have had access to his personal information and reasons to betray their oath of service. "It has to be someone in administration," Marcus concluded after careful thought. The information they used was too specific and too current for an outsider to obtain. Someone with access to personnel files, duty rosters, and financial records provided the details needed to frame me. Detective Chen assigned a team to investigate palace administrative staff while Marcus worked with Detective Williams to analyze Crawford's known associates. The list included several former military personnel who had been dismissed from various government positions for misconduct or security violations. As evening approached, Marcus's phone rang with a call that changed everything. The voice was electronically disguised, but the message was clear. "If you continue helping the police, your family will pay the price. Drop the investigation now, or Emma and Sarah will face consequences you can't imagine." The threat confirmed that Crawford's network was still active and monitoring the investigation. They had demonstrated their ability to fabricate evidence and manipulate official records. The implication that they might target innocent family members showed the depths of their criminality. Marcus looked at the detectives with new determination. "They just made a serious mistake," he said, his military training overriding his fear. "Threatening my family crosses a line that can't be uncrossed. Now this is personal for me too." Detective Williams immediately arranged protection for Marcus's wife and daughter, while Detective Chen contacted the technical team to trace the threatening call. The criminals had revealed themselves as active and dangerous, but they had also provided new evidence that could be used to track them down. "We'll get them," Detective Chen promised Marcus. "But first, we need to make sure your family is safe. Then we can focus on hunting down Crawford and everyone who helped him." The investigation was entering a new phase, one where the stakes were higher, but the determination to succeed was stronger than ever. Marcus realized that his ordeal was far from over. Clearing his name had been just the beginning. Now he was committed to helping bring down an entire network of criminals who had attacked not just him, but the institution he had sworn to protect, and the family he loved more than his own life. The safe house was a modest apartment in South London, chosen for its anonymity rather than comfort. Marcus sat at a small table with Detective Williams, studying surveillance photographs and computer files spread across the surface. His wife Sarah and daughter Emma were staying at a different location under police protection, a precaution that made the threat against his family feel terrifyingly real. "We've identified the mole," Detective Williams announced, sliding a personnel file across the table. The photograph showed Janet Morrison, the administrative coordinator who had worked at the palace for 8 years. Her access to personnel records, duty schedules, and security protocols made her perfectly positioned to gather intelligence on Royal Guard operations. Marcus studied Morrison's file carefully. He remembered her as quiet and efficient, someone who processed paperwork without drawing attention to herself. "What made you suspect her?" he asked, trying to recall any interactions that might have seemed suspicious in hindsight. "Financial records," Detective Williams explained. Morrison has been receiving payments from the same shell companies that paid Crawford. She also accessed your personnel file dozens of times in the weeks before your arrest, far more than her job duties required. The evidence was conclusive but disturbing. Morrison had betrayed not just Marcus personally, but the entire institution she had served for nearly a decade. Her position required security clearance and an oath of loyalty, both of which she had violated for money. Detective Chen arrived with updates from the Belgian authorities. Crawford had been tracked to a meeting with representatives from 3 different criminal organizations: arms dealers, document forgers, and a group specializing in corporate espionage. The scope of the conspiracy was larger than anyone had initially imagined. "They're not just targeting the Royal Guard," Detective Chen reported. "This network has been working to compromise security personnel across multiple government agencies. They create scandals and false accusations to damage public trust in British institutions." Marcus felt sick as the full implications became clear. His arrest hadn't just been about personal revenge. It was part of a systematic attack on British security infrastructure. By destroying the reputation of trusted guards and officers, the criminals hoped to weaken the entire system from within. "How many others have been targeted?" Marcus asked, dreading the answer. The thought that other innocent people might have suffered similar ordeals made his anger burn hotter than his personal pain. "At least 6 that we've identified so far," Detective Williams replied grimly. "A police detective in Manchester, 2 army sergeants, a customs officer, and a security guard at a government facility. All arrested on fabricated evidence. All cases eventually dropped, but not before their careers and reputations were damaged." The pattern was clear and disturbing. The criminals chose targets who were respected professionals with access to sensitive information or security procedures. By destroying their credibility and forcing their removal from positions of trust, the network created gaps in British security that could be exploited. Marcus's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Captain Reynolds at the palace. Morrison had been taken into custody during a carefully coordinated operation, but not before attempting to destroy computer files containing additional intelligence about Royal Guard operations. The forensics team was working to recover the deleted data. "We need to move fast," Detective Chen said urgently. "If Morrison was destroying evidence, it means the network knows we're closing in. They'll either run or escalate their activities to cover their tracks." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Emma, Marcus's daughter, called from the safe house with information that changed everything. While reviewing her social media accounts for security purposes, she had noticed that someone had been following her online activities for months, collecting information about her family's routines and relationships. The account was fake, Emma explained over the secure phone line, but whoever created it was very good at social engineering. They gathered details about Dad's work schedule, our family finances, even our vacation plans. This wasn't a quick operation. They were planning this for a long time. Detective Williams traced the social media surveillance back to a computer in Janet Morrison's apartment. The administrative coordinator had been collecting intelligence on Marcus's family for over 6 months, building a detailed profile that was later used to create the fabricated evidence for his arrest. She knew about Emma's university expenses, Marcus realized with growing anger. That's why they focused on financial crimes in their frame job. They knew we were worried about money, so they created fake bank deposits that would seem like an obvious motive for corruption. The psychological manipulation was as sophisticated as the technical aspects of the conspiracy. The criminals had studied their targets carefully, crafting accusations that would seem plausible based on known personal circumstances and concerns. Meanwhile, international law enforcement agencies were coordinating to track down the network's leadership. Crawford's meetings in Brussels had been monitored by multiple intelligence services, providing a wealth of information about the organization's structure and methods. "They call themselves the Integrity Initiative," Detective Chen reported with bitter irony. "Their stated goal is to expose corruption in government institutions, but their real purpose is to create corruption and chaos that benefits their criminal clients." The investigation revealed connections to foreign intelligence, services seeking to destabilize British government operations. By compromising security personnel and creating scandals, the network helped hostile nations gather intelligence and weaken British defensive capabilities. Marcus volunteered to serve as bait for a trap designed to catch Crawford and his remaining associates. "They threaten my family," he said firmly. "I want to be the one who brings them down." His military training and insider knowledge of Royal Guard procedures made him uniquely qualified for the dangerous assignment. The plan required Marcus to appear vulnerable and isolated, as if the investigation had been called off and he had been abandoned by law enforcement. He would return to his normal duties at the palace while secretly wearing surveillance equipment and following protocols designed to draw the criminals into making contact. "They'll try to recruit you," Detective Williams explained. "Crawford's network specializes in turning honest people into assets through blackmail, bribery, or intimidation. They'll approach you with an offer that seems reasonable, but gradually escalates into full cooperation with their criminal activities." The psychological pressure was intense. Marcus had to appear genuinely defeated and desperate while actually maintaining his integrity and gathering evidence. One mistake could expose the operation or put his family in greater danger. Sarah and Emma were moved to an even more secure location as the operation began. The separation was painful, but Marcus knew that their safety depended on the successful completion of the mission. Every day he couldn't contact them directly was another reminder of what the criminals had taken from him. The first approach came within 48 hours of Marcus returning to duty. A man claiming to be a journalist contacted him with an offer to tell his side of the story, in exchange for information about palace security procedures. The conversation was carefully recorded and provided valuable intelligence about the network's current operations. "They're testing your willingness to cooperate," Detective Chen explained during a covert briefing. "The requests will get more specific and more dangerous as they build trust and commitment. We need to let them think they're succeeding without actually compromising any real security information." Marcus felt like he was walking a tightrope between justice and revenge. His desire to protect his family and catch the criminals was balanced against the need to maintain his professional integrity and avoid becoming the corrupt guard that Crawford's network had falsely portrayed him to be. The pressure intensified when Morrison, now in custody, revealed additional details about the network's plans. They had targeted Marcus not just for revenge, but as a potential long-term asset. The frame job was designed to make him desperate enough to accept criminal offers in exchange for financial security and protection from further false accusations. "They studied you for months," Morrison admitted during interrogation. "They know about your military background, your loyalty to the crown, your financial concerns. The plan was to break you down systematically until you would do anything to protect your family and your career." The manipulation was more sophisticated and more personal than Marcus had imagined. The criminals hadn't just attacked his reputation, they had tried to remake him in their own image, turning an honest guard into a corrupted asset who would serve their interests for years to come. But they had underestimated his strength and the support system that surrounded him. His family's faith in his innocence, his colleagues' trust in his integrity, and his own commitment to justice had proven stronger than their psychological warfare. As the trap began to close around Crawford's network, Marcus prepared for the final confrontation that would determine whether justice would prevail or whether the criminals would escape to victimize others. The stakes had never been higher, and the outcome would affect not just his own future, but the security of the institutions he had sworn to protect. The warehouse in East London felt cold and abandoned as Marcus waited in the shadows, wearing hidden cameras and audio equipment that would capture everything about to unfold. 3 weeks of careful planning had led to this moment, the final meeting where David Crawford would reveal himself and attempt to recruit the man he had tried to destroy. Detective Chen and her team were positioned around the building, ready to move in when the signal was given. Years of police work had taught her patience, but this case felt different. The psychological torture inflicted on Marcus and his family demanded justice, not just arrest procedures. Marcus checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. Crawford had specified midnight for their meeting, choosing a time and place that emphasized secrecy and danger. The former Royal Guard wanted to demonstrate his power and Marcus's vulnerability before making his recruitment pitch. The first sign of Crawford's arrival was the sound of multiple vehicles approaching from different directions. Through the warehouse windows, Marcus could see at least 4 cars positioning themselves around the building. Crawford wasn't taking any chances. He had backup plans and escape routes prepared. "Remember, let him talk," Detective Williams whispered through the nearly invisible earpiece Marcus wore. We need him to incriminate himself and reveal information about his network. Don't let anger compromise the mission." The warehouse door opened with a metallic groan and David Crawford stepped inside. He looked different from Marcus's memories. Thinner, more nervous, but also more dangerous. His eyes constantly scanned the environment, checking for threats and escape routes like a man who had learned not to trust anyone. "Hello, Marcus," Crawford said, his voice carrying a mixture of satisfaction and wariness. "I have to admit you've impressed me. Most people would have broken after what we put you through, but you're still standing, still playing the loyal soldier." Marcus forced himself to remain calm despite the rage building inside him. This was the man who had terrorized his family, destroyed his reputation, and tried to turn him into a criminal. "What do you want, David?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. Crawford smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "I want to offer you a choice," he said, pulling out a tablet computer and showing Marcus a series of photographs. "Your wife leaving the hospital last night. Your daughter walking to her university classes. They're beautiful targets, so vulnerable, so trusting." The threat was explicit and immediate. Marcus's hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to remain motionless. "You said you wanted to talk business," he replied through gritted teeth. "Make your offer." "Smart man," Crawford said approvingly. "Here's the situation. My organization needs someone with current access to palace security protocols. The frame job was never meant to destroy you permanently. It was meant to make you desperate enough to work with us." Crawford activated the tablet, showing Marcus bank account information with impressive balances. £50,000 immediately, then $10,000 per month for information about royal family schedules, security changes, and guard rotations. Simple intelligence work, nothing that directly harms anyone. "And if I refuse?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. The photographs of his family made Crawford's backup plan obvious. "Then the frame job becomes permanent," Crawford replied coldly. "We have enough fabricated evidence to destroy your life completely. Bank records, communication logs, even video footage that shows you committing crimes you never heard of. Your family will suffer along with you." The sophistication of the blackmail operation was staggering. Crawford's network had prepared multiple layers of false evidence, creating a web of lies so complex that proving innocence would be nearly impossible for most victims. "There's more," Crawford continued, enjoying his moment of apparent power. "We have assets in law enforcement, the court system, even the palace administration. Fighting us isn't just futile, it's dangerous. Ask the police detective in Manchester who tried to investigate us. Oh wait, you can't. He had a very unfortunate accident." The implication was clear. The network was willing to use violence against anyone who threatened their operations. They had moved beyond fraud and blackmail into actual murder, eliminating threats with the same cold efficiency they used to fabricate evidence. Marcus realized that Crawford was revealing information that could bring down the entire network. The hidden recording equipment was capturing detailed confessions about multiple crimes, including the murder of a police officer. "How many people have you killed?" he asked, trying to draw out more admissions. "Only when necessary," Crawford replied dismissively. "Most people are smart enough to cooperate once they understand the consequences of resistance. You're smart enough too, aren't you, Marcus? You understand that your family's safety depends on your decision tonight." "I understand more than you think," Marcus said quietly, then louder. "I understand that you're under arrest." The warehouse erupted into chaos as police teams burst through multiple entrances simultaneously. Crawford reached for a weapon, but Marcus was faster, his royal guard training taking over as he tackled the former colleague who had caused so much pain. "David Crawford, you are under arrest for conspiracy, blackmail, fraud, and murder," Detective Chen announced as handcuffs clicked around Crawford's wrists. The same type of sophisticated restraints that had been used on Marcus were now securing the real criminal. Crawford's backup team tried to escape, but Detective Williams's units were ready for them. The operation that had taken weeks to plan was executed in less than 5 minutes, resulting in 7 arrests and the seizure of computers containing evidence about dozens of other crimes. "You have no idea what you've done," Crawford snarled at Marcus as he was led away. "This network is bigger than you can imagine. We have people everywhere and they'll come for your family eventually." But his threats rang hollow now. The recording equipment had captured everything, and the computers seized from his associates contained detailed records of the network's operations across multiple countries. International law enforcement agencies would spend months unraveling the full scope of the conspiracy. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the Old Bailey courthouse as Crawford, and 17 of his associates were sentenced to lengthy prison terms. The evidence had been overwhelming, and several network members had cooperated with authorities in exchange for reduced sentences. Janet Morrison received 10 years for her role in compromising palace security and providing intelligence to criminals. Her betrayal had been particularly painful for Marcus, since it came from someone he had trusted as a colleague and professional. The international investigation revealed that Crawford's Integrity Initiative had been responsible for false accusations against more than 40 security professionals across Europe and North America. The psychological and professional damage to innocent people was staggering, with several victims losing careers and families due to fabricated scandals. Detective Chen and Detective Williams received commendations for their work on the case, but they both knew that the real hero was Marcus himself. His integrity under pressure and willingness to risk his safety to catch the criminals had made justice possible. Marcus returned to his duties as a royal guard with enhanced responsibilities for security training and threat assessment. His experience with sophisticated fraud techniques made him valuable for educating other guards about potential vulnerabilities and attack methods. The palace implemented new security procedures based on lessons learned from the investigation. Administrative access to personnel records was restricted, and new verification protocols were established to prevent the type of intelligence gathering that had made the frame job possible. Sarah returned to her nursing duties at the hospital, where colleagues welcomed her back with understanding and support. The ordeal had been traumatic for the entire family, but it had also demonstrated the strength of their relationships and their community. Emma finished her first year at university with honors, despite the disruption caused by the investigation and trial. She had become an advocate for criminal justice reform, writing articles about the psychological impact of false accusations and the importance of proper investigation procedures. On the first anniversary of his arrest, Marcus stood in the same courtyard where he had been handcuffed and humiliated. This time he was receiving a commendation for his service to justice and his protection of institutional integrity. The real victory, he told the assembled crowd of colleagues and family members, isn't that we caught the criminals. It's that we proved the system can work when people choose integrity over convenience, truth over expediency. The handcuffs that had once symbolized his powerlessness were now displayed in a law enforcement museum as evidence of sophisticated criminal techniques. But more importantly, they represented the moment when an innocent man chose to trust justice rather than seek revenge. Detective Chen kept a copy of the warehouse recording on her desk as a reminder that justice sometimes requires patience, courage, and faith in institutions that aren't perfect, but can be made better. The case had tested everyone involved, but it had ultimum. Telly strengthened the systems designed to protect innocent people. Marcus never forgot the 15 seconds it took him to escape from those handcuffs, not because of the technical achievement, but because of what it represented. In that moment, he had possessed the power to run, to hide, to give up on justice and seek only survival. Instead, he had chosen to stay, to fight, and to prove that integrity could triumph over sophisticated criminal manipulation. The choice had cost him months of anguish and had put his family at risk, but it had also saved countless future victims from experiencing similar ordeals. As he stood guard at the palace, watching tourists take photographs and children wave at the guards, Marcus knew that his real duty wasn't just protecting the royal family. It was protecting the idea that institutions could be trusted, that justice was possible, and that ordinary people could make extraordinary differences when they chose to do what was right rather than what was easy. The emotional weight of his ordeal would never completely disappear, but it had been transformed into strength, wisdom, and an unshakable commitment to the values that had sustained him through the darkest period of his life. In the end, Crawford's attempt to break him had only made him stronger.